Howdy, this is Lemmy with RevZilla, here to talk to you today about FMF Exhaust for Dirt. You should be looking into an FMF exhaust for your dirt machine if you're looking to shed a little weight, make a little bit of joyous noise, and you're possibly also looking into making a little bit more power if you're considering a full system exhaust. Now these are currently being made for a wide variety of motorcycles, 2-stroke and 4-stroke, almost all off-road, and FMF even has a couple street applications as well. Make sure you throw your bike information into our bike finder. We're going to show you the stuff that fits your motorcycle exactly. Now installation on all of these is going to range somewhere between 1 and 2 beards in our BSD or beard scale of difficulty. Depending on what kind of bike you're working with and what kind of exhaust you're going to be installing, you're probably looking at somewhere between the hard 1 and the easy 2. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but you should know that most home mechanics with a decent toolkit should be able to get one of these on in a pretty short period of time. Now before I start jawing on and on about FMF exhaust, do me a favor, wrap your earballs around this bad bitch, the Q4 on our CRF 450R here. Sounds pretty good, right? It's got great tone, but it's not the loudest pipe in the world. We're going to cover that a little bit more thoroughly in the coming moments here, but you should know that just about every FMF exhaust you're going to lay your hands on is going to improve the sound of your motorcycle pretty greatly. So that name FMF Flying Machine Factory really describes well what FMF does. They make bikes with knobbies go quickly. One of the other things that's absolutely awesome about FMF exhausts is their modularity. And when I say that, what I mean is you can start with one part of their system and add another one later. It's not something all exhaust manufacturers allow you to do. So whether you have a 2-stroke or a 4-stroke, you start with either a silencer or a muffler, you can always come back later and add a header or an expansion chamber in for just about all the exhaust systems they make. Now we're going to split this video up into a couple different parts. At any point, if you don't want to hear me chatter, you can click that menu and get to the part of the video that's most appropriate to you. We're going to kick things off with 4-stroke offerings from FMF, and then we're going to come into 2-stroke stuff, because you guys on 2-strokers, you have a little bit different exhaust needs than your 4-stroke brethren. Finally, we're going to round things out with an installation section for both of these types of exhaust, 4-cycle or 2-cycle. Right now, though, we're going to kick it off with the 4-stroke offerings from FMF. Now, if you're considering an FMF exhaust for your dirt bike, you're at sort of a crossroads right now, and you can go one of two ways. You're either going to look at a slip-on, a muffler-only sort of a setup, or perhaps if you're looking for maximum power, you might be checking out a full system with a header and a muffler together. Now, if you're looking at just a slip-on, you should know that some of the benefits there are going to be a little bit of weight loss. You're obviously going to have improved sound, and a lot of people would argue the looks are a little bit better too. Look at that aggressive little muffler peeking out from under here, kind of a sexy look. So those of you who are looking into just a mufflers only system, you're going to get all those benefits, but if you're checking out a full system exhaust, you're going to probably get the exact same setup there with the addition of potential to make additional horsepower. These are going to help you make more power for your motorcycle. You'll be going a little bit quicker, especially if you're going to do some additional tuning, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the installation section. So let's kick off with some of the slip-on mufflers that all of you guys are going to be using, regardless of whether you're looking at a slip-on or a full system. We're going to kick things off up here with the 4.1 RCT muffler. This is the crown jewel in FMF's 4-stroke lineup. As you may have guessed, this is titanium. You can see here these are offered in several different finishes. We have a blue colored one up here. I think it looks absolutely awesome. Kind of lets people know that you do have the nicest FMF exhaust money can buy. The titanium is also going to help keep the weight down. It's an exotic material. It's one of the things they use to, again, reduce weight. You'll notice at the end here too, carbon fiber end cap, also an available option depending on how you decide to option out your 4.1 exhaust. And when coupled up with an exhaust header, this is going to make for a very power producing system. You're going to have something that a system combination that's going to help you make maximum power. So if you're looking for the premium exhaust FMF makes, look no further than the 4.1 RCT. Moving on, you can see here we have the Power Core 4 as well as the Q4. You heard the Q4 earlier on our 450. These things sound absolutely slamming. The Q4 is arguably FMF's most popular 4-stroke muffler with good reason. You get great sound out of it. It helps drop a little bit of weight, but this thing is also a pretty affordable option. This is not a muffler that's going to break the bank. Now you're still getting some premium materials here. You can see we've got an aluminum exhaust canister. You'll notice too, stainless, also used in the construction of these puppies. And the difference here between them them is going to be the Q4 is the slightly quieter version of the Power Core. The Q4 is going to be great for those of you guys who want that awesome tone, but you don't want that chest-thumping, mind-blowing volume that seems to come with an uncorked thumper. So we've covered some of the slip-on options here, as I had mentioned. Being these are modular, these are also going to be mufflers that you guys with full systems are going to use. But those of you who are considering a full system, you want to know what your header options are. So let's talk about a couple of them right now. Now, really, when you're coming into the header game with FMF, kind of their entry-level point is the high flow. Think of the high flow header as sort of your bump up from stock. It's a great replacement. If you happen to crash your bike and you destroyed a header, a high flow header can be a nice step up. It's typically a little bit more affordable and easier to find than the OE header, and it's going to give you a little bit better performance. But that's just the entry level of the game. If you're looking to make some more serious power, you're going to want to check out the Power Bomb and the Mega Bomb. So when we look at this, the actual Power Bomb itself here is a larger section of pipe welded into the header. And what the Power Bomb is going to help you do is make high RPM power. So you're gonna have a strong mid-range using this, but for those of you guys who are really whacking out the throttle, riding out each gear, the Power Bomb is what's going to help you make that power upstairs in the rev range. So you're going to fatten up that mid-range and again, make that high RPM power. Also going to be useful for those of you who are really working your bikes over. Maybe you've got some crazy high comp piston in there, you've got a big bore kit, especially if you've got cams that really like being revved. A Power Bomb header is definitely going to be a component of your exhaust system that you're going to want to keep in mind. Now, for those of you who are a little bit different in the way you ride your bike, you might be thinking the Mega Bomb is the way to go. The Mega Bomb instead offers lots and lots of low-end power, so you're going to get a big hit of power right off idle up into the mid-range. This is really going to fatten up the lower end of your power band. So for those of you who like that tractor feeling, you're riding a locomotive, you got all that low-end power, the Mega Bomb is what you want to look at. I expect to see a lot of these, especially on guys who are doing real short motocross tracks. Anybody up here in the Northeast, if you're riding real tight single track, a lot of woods riding, if that low-end grunt is important to you, you probably want to check out a Mega Bomb head pipe. You can see we have some other accessories up here. I want to chat about them really briefly. Down here you can see we have a couple of Sparkies. Spark arresters, for those of you who do not want to start a fire, you want to be legal on USFS, if you're riding around Forest Service lands, or perhaps you're just trying to be a responsible rider and make sure you're not throwing any possible sparks out. These all can be fitted with a Sparky. So it's nice to know that if you happen to damage the one that comes with your muffler, you can always go back and retrofit one in. They do offer quite a few of them. Moving on, if you're riding in the dirt, well, I think we all know what this puppy is. It's a tailpipe plug. It's for keeping water out of your muffler. I actually use one of these when I'm washing down my own dirt bike. I really like them because you kind of just throw that puppy in the tailpipe, spray it down. You don't have to worry about soaking your exhaust packing, possibly ruining something, or just introducing moisture into your exhaust, promoting rust or, again, exhaust packing rot. The final item up here might kind of surprise you. You're looking at a number plate. Why do we have plastics up here? Well, kind of an interesting story on this one. So when it comes to this plastic, this actually came, believe it or not, with this Q4 setup we have on this 450R. And I have it up here just sort of to use it as a talking point about how FMF is carrying you through the entire exhaust installation and ownership process. This was originally a dual muffler bike. Now, of course, FMF knows if they're chopping this thing down to a single muffler, you now have this large number plate on the other side that swells way out, you don't need. So instead what they do is they actually include a slightly more svelte piece of plastic, kind of tighten that area up. It's one less thing to rip off, and again, it is kind of getting rid of some of the weight, gets rid of that bulbous, wide look for your dirt bike, makes it a little bit more slender, a little bit easier to ride. So if you've got a 4-stroke bike and you're considering an FMF exhaust, maybe you're still on the fence, click that info button, check out some of our rider reviews. See if somebody has a bike similar to yours, checking out the part that you're interested in, and figure out if that's going to work right for you. Now, for those of you guys on Two Smokers, stay tuned. We're coming up with the oil burner section next. Alrighty, two-stroke guys, let's do this thing. Who needs valves, right? So we broke your section apart from the 4-stroke guys because, as you well know, your needs are a little bit different than those who are running a 4-stroke motor. So if you're looking into an FMF exhaust for your bike, odds are good you're probably considering at least a silencer. And some of you should know too that really with a 2-stroke, unlike its 4-stroke brethren, big power comes from the exhaust, especially the expansion chamber. Most of you probably know that, but if you're not aware, you should choose your expansion chamber carefully because you can really alter the power characteristics of your motorcycle. Still though, there are going to be some of you out there who want to keep the cost down, and maybe you're just looking to make a little bit more noise, maybe dump a little bit of weight off your bike. So let's start off off with silencers. We'll talk about some of FMF's more notable offerings, and from there we're going to move into expansion pipes and talk about what those can do for you. So let's kick things off here with the Titanium 2 muffler. This is the top dog in the FMF two-stroke lineup. So one of the first things I wanted to direct your attention to is the size of this muffler. Note that it's shorter than its brethren up here. Now, as the name may suggest to you, this is made with some premium materials. Titanium is arguably one of the lightest, most exotic metals you can use in an exhaust. FMF is using it up here. It's going to keep the weight down on your machine, and it's also going to be part of a full system should you elect later on to add an expansion chamber into thing. This silencer is going to help you make some power. So moving on down the line, you can see here we have the Q Stealth. Now this is the silencer I think of as the responsible rider's choice. You're still going to be able to make decent power, especially with an expansion chamber added to this, but you're not going to irritate those around you. You're not going to have people going nuts about the sound of dirt bikes all around them. I think it's a really cool offering, really shows FMF's dedication to the sport. Now there are a couple other interesting items you can see up here. We've got a Turbine Core 2 muffler. This is actually a universal system. I think it's really nifty that FMF offers this. If you have an older bike, those of you guys on say like an old IT, DT, something like that, and you're trying to get a spark arrestor approved muffler on there, or perhaps you don't even have a silencer at all on your bike, the Turbine Core 2 Universal Kit's kind of nice. Comes with a little weld-on finger. All you do is put that little tab in place, and it kind of allows you to put a silencer onto your bike. Allows you to retrofit a nicer silencer onto an older bike. Something to think about, kind of a cool option there. And then moving on to their final silencer, you can see up here too, we got this little guy right here, the Power Core. The reason I think this is so nifty is that this is for a PW80. Those of you guys who've zipped around on a Pee-wee before, I think just about everybody has at some point, know that it's a fun little bike, and I really love the fact that FMF makes exhausts for even bikes as small as that. Again, it shows that they're approaching the whole market. A lot of exhaust suppliers out there aren't even touching two-stroke. The fact that not only does FMF support two-stroke, but they support it so fully as to even cover some of the smaller kids' bikes, I think really shows, again, dedication to their customer, dedication to their core fan base. So let's stop going on and on about silencers now, because those of you who want to do more than just make a little bit of noise know that the big power is in the expansion chamber, and FMF has a number of expansion chambers. I want to run through some of the offerings they have here and sort of parse out which expansion pipe it is that you should be looking at depending on how you're riding your motorcycle. So let's kick things off. Up here you can see we have the Fatty. You can see we have this expansion chamber up here. This is going to be a good generalist pipe. This is FMF's hottest selling expansion chamber with good reason. This is a pipe that's going to make lots and lots of mid-range power. It's also going to help a little bit down low end, help a little bit up top, but generally smoothing the power curve and making the mid-range a little bit more usable for you. The Fatty, also called the Fatty Gold, has a nickel plating on it. It's where the name comes from. This nickel plating, after this heats up a little bit, goes through a couple of use cycles, you get that characteristic gold color that really has been a hallmark of FMF expansion chambers. You should also know the Fatty comes in a factory Fatty version as well, which we don't have up here. The factory Fatty, a little bit different, made from a much lighter gauge metal and also not finished. Comes in a works finish. There's going to be raw, bare finish on this thing. When you go to the works finish, you get a lighter pipe. However, it's going to be a little bit more susceptible to damage. That's one of those things you want to sort of weigh out your options there. What's more important to you, longevity or the weight loss? Let's move on here. You can see here we have a Gnarly Pipe. So the Gnarly Pipe is different from the Fatty in that this thing really concentrates on giving you that big low-end power. It's going to give you a big hit right off idle. You're going to fatten up the mid-range a little bit, but you're probably going to flatten out on the top. I'm imagining we're going to see these mostly for guys running through the woods. If you're doing lots of tight single track, tight woods work, the Gnarly Pipe is probably where you want to be. You're going to, again, need that big low-end power. You're probably not running out of gear for very long. Something like the Gnarly Pipe that can go ahead and fatten up that low end and a little bit of the mid-range for you, probably going to be a great choice for a lot of riders out there. Now that brings me to the extreme opposite of things, of course. Over here you can see we have the SST expansion chamber here. I like this thing. This is going to be very comparable to those of you who remember the old FMF Rev pipe. This is going to be very similar. Makes all of its power upstairs. That's what this is for high R power. So for those of you who are running wide open out there in the desert, you're really cranking out and you're running each gear out to its maximum, the SST pipe is something you want to look into. Like I said, very similar to that older Rev pipe. However, what they're able to do is keep a lot of the same high RPM a lot of you knew and loved with the Rev pipe, but also keep some of the low end. Rather than giving up that low end power, having a real flat off-idle bog, instead you're getting factory-like off-idle performance, but you are going to get that big dose of power up top in the rev range. So this isn't all that they're offering. Those of you who are riding around on two-strokes, you know that obviously repacking your silencer is something you have to do early and often. FMF does offer lots of two-stroke packing, lots of kits, all sorts of exhaust accessories to help you keep your investment running in top shape. So now we're getting to the point where we're going to talk about installation for both two-stroke and for four-stroke bikes. As I had mentioned, this is going to range 1 to 2 beards, depends on the bike you're working on, depends whether you're looking at four-stroke or two-stroke. Also is going to depend on whether you're considering just throwing a silencer or a muffler on there, or if in fact you're going to do a full system, you're going to throw an expansion chamber / head pipe onto your motorcycle. So those of you who are doing just a silencer, just a muffler, typically very, very easy. Just a couple of bolts, pop those puppies off, pop the new ones on. You're just gonna make your bike sound a little bit cooler, you're gonna make it look a little bit better, and again, drop some of that weight, which is the important name of the game here in the dirt segment. The other thing that you wanna consider too is that you're not gonna have to do much in the way of tuning. If you're just swapping out a silencer, that's part of what makes this kind of an easy swap. You don't really have too much wrenching to do beyond that. One of the downsides, I will mention that something that disappointed me a little bit with the FMF Q4 we installed on our house bike. We removed a gasket and clamp that Honda had provided for the original 2-muffler system on there, and the FMF was just a slip fit coming onto the head pipe. Not the worst thing in the world, but no exhaust springs, no method of retention, no clamp included. I called them up, talked to their techs there. They said they just rock that slip fit with a little bit of silicone in there. I don't know that I think it's the most secure way to secure a muffler to a head pipe, but it is something that should be noted. If you're used to, again, that standard gasket clamp setup, you're not going to have the exact same thing with an FMF. Now, for those of you who are considering an expansion chamber, or again, perhaps a header if you're on a 4-stroke machine, you've got a little bit more work to do. Obviously, there's more pipe to remove, there's more pipe to install, and you may find a need to disassemble a little bit more of your bike. Depending on what you're riding, you may be doing things like lifting the tank, sort of getting some plastics out of the way. You may have a little bit more work to do than someone who is doing simply a silencer or a bolt-on muffler. Keep that in mind. But I think the big thing there that's going to sort of stretch you out in that 2-beard category is the retune, especially those of you on a 2-stroke bike, or even those of you who are riding a 4-stroke fuel-injected bike. You've got to get a little more fuel into the system oftentimes. So you're going to have to go out, take a ride, see how your bike is running. But keep in mind, part of the thing that's going to add to the time of that installation is you are going to have to modify your fuel system, and you are going to have to do a little bit of testing and tuning. Something to think about. The other thing I want you to keep in mind, again, if you're going after an expansion pipe or a head pipe on here, if you're working with a 4-stroke, put a head pipe on, you are going to want to replace your exhaust port gasket. If you're replacing an expansion chamber, you want to do your O-rings on your 2-stroke bikes. Keep that in mind. Again, something you want to have handy. FMF fortunately does include with the 2-stroke bikes, you've got the O-rings in here. You can see on the end of these, we do have the O-rings in place. But those of you who are rocking a header, you're not going to necessarily have the gaskets in the box. Keep that in mind. You may want to score an exhaust gasket in order to complete your installation. Now, I think that's going to round out just about everything for FMF exhaust, both 2-stroke and 4-stroke. My opinion is not the only game in town, though. Click that info button, learn a little bit more about the FMF setup if you can find a rider who's got a good review on a rig like yours. If you need a little bit more personal or individualized attention, do not be afraid to get in touch with one of our gear geeks. We're here to help. You can always give us a jingle on the telling bone, 877-792-9455, or if email is your preferred method of contact, cs@RevZilla.com. We'll get you a happy gear geek here to help you. As always, I'm Lemmy. I'm out of here.